Tom Harper wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of grease across his weathered skin. At 73 years old, he moved slower than he used to, but his hands were still steady. The salvage yard of Kepler Station stretched out before him like a graveyard of metal and broken dreams. Ships from a dozen different worlds sat rusting in the harsh light of the station's artificial sun. But Tom only cared about one ship. The Meridian sat at the far end of the yard, massive and silent. It had been there for 30 years, ever since it crashed in the disputed zone between human and alien territory. Most people had given up on it long ago. The corporate salvage teams had picked it clean of anything valuable they could find. Panels had been removed, wires pulled out, whole sections gutted for parts. What remained was a skeleton, a shell of something that might have once been magnificent. Everyone else saw garbage. Tom saw something different. Every morning at 6, he arrived at the ship with his cleaning supplies. A bucket of soapy water, rags that had been washed 1,000 times, and brushes of various sizes. He would climb the rusted ladder into the ship's interior and begin his work. He scrubbed panels that no one else would ever see. He polished surfaces that served no purpose anymore. He treated the dead machine like it was something sacred. The other workers thought he was crazy. Jake Morrison, a young salvager with bright red hair and a cocky smile, often led the mockery. He was 25 and strong, the kind of guy who thought muscle and youth were all that mattered. He would lean against the doorway of Tom's workspace and shake his head. Still playing nursemaid to that corpse, old man? Jake would say, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You know it's never going to fly again, right? You're wasting your time." Pete Anderson would laugh along, his belly shaking. Pete was in his 40s, but acted like he was still in college. He thought everything was a joke. "Maybe Tom thinks if he cleans it nice enough, the ship will wake up and thank him," he would say, and the others would howl with laughter. Lisa Chin worked in the inventory office. She was quiet, efficient, and completely practical. She never mocked Tom to his face, but he had seen her rolling her eyes when she thought he wasn't looking. Once, he heard her telling another worker, "It's sad, really. He should be enjoying his retirement, not obsessing over scrap metal." Tom never responded to any of them. He just kept working. The truth was, he couldn't explain why he felt drawn to the ship. It wasn't rational. It wasn't logical. But every time he stepped inside the Meridian, something stirred in his chest, a feeling he couldn't name, like the ship was calling to him, waiting for something. He had his AI assistant with him, a small handheld device that everyone else had upgraded years ago. The newer models were sleeker, faster, more powerful. But Tom's old assistant still worked fine, and more importantly, it had something the others didn't. It had been collecting data from the ship for years, storing fragments of corrupted files that the corporate teams had dismissed as worthless. Tom spent his evenings going through that data, line by line, code by code. Most of it was gibberish, symbols and languages no one understood. But sometimes, just sometimes, he found patterns, connections, things that seemed almost deliberate. The ship's architecture wasn't random, he realized. The way the corridors curved, the placement of the control panels, the strange symbols etched into the walls. It all followed a system, a logic. It reminded him of something, though he couldn't quite place what. Director Walsh, the station's chief operations officer, had called Tom into his office 3 times in the past month. Walsh was a thin man with nervous eyes and expensive suits. His assistant, Grace Kim, stood beside him during their meetings, her tablet always in hand, her expression always disapproving. "Harper, this needs to stop," Walsh had said during their last meeting. "You're using station resources for a personal project. The cleaning supplies, the electricity, your time. It's all coming out of our budget. The ship is dead. Accept it and move on." Tom had nodded politely and continued his work the next day. Ben Taylor, a salvager in his early 20s, had even started posting videos of Tom on social media. Videos of the old man scrubbing panels, talking quietly to the ship, carefully repairing circuits that led nowhere. The captions were cruel. "Grandpa's gone senile." One read, "When you can't let go," said another. The videos got thousands of views. People Tom had never met were laughing at him. But Tom didn't care about any of that. He had found something, a chamber deep in the ship's core that no one else had discovered. And inside that chamber was a panel, covered in dust and corrosion, but still intact. It looked like a power matrix, but more complex than anything he had ever seen. Tom had been working on that panel for weeks now, cleaning it, studying it, trying to understand how it connected to the rest of the ship's systems. He had a feeling that soon, very soon, he would understand everything. Tom's fingers traced the symbols on the wall for the 100th time. They were beautiful in their own way, carved deep into the metal with precision that seemed impossible. Some were circles with lines through them. Others looked like stars with too many points. A few reminded him of letters from alphabets he had seen in old Earth history books, but not quite the same. He pulled out his notebook, the paper worn soft from handling. Page after page was filled with drawings of these symbols, notes about where he'd found them, theories about what they might mean. His handwriting was shaky now, not like it used to be, but he could still read every word. The patterns were everywhere once he knew to look for them. A symbol near the entrance would appear again near a doorway 3 levels down. The space in between certain marks was always the same. It was like the ship was trying to tell him something, leaving clues scattered throughout its body like breadcrumbs in a forest. Tom had started mapping the entire interior. He sketched rough diagrams of corridors and chambers, marking where each symbol appeared. When he laid all the papers out on his small apartment floor at night, a picture began to emerge. The symbols weren't random decorations. They were a language, a guide, maybe even a message. His AI assistant beeped softly in his pocket. He pulled it out and looked at the screen. Another corrupted file had been partially reconstructed. The device worked slowly, piecing together fragments of data bit by bit, but it was making progress. This file showed something that made Tom's heart beat faster. It was a log entry, or at least part 1. The translation was rough, full of gaps and question marks, but the meaning was clear enough. Mission objective: locate, species designation, markers genetic, Earth coordinates. Tom read it 3 times. The ship had been looking for something, or someone, and whatever it was searching for had something to do with Earth. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Jake and 2 other salvagers approaching. One was Danny Foster, a heavy-set man with permanent grease stains on his coveralls. The other was Rachel Brooks, a woman in her 30s who usually kept to herself but seemed to enjoy watching others squirm. "Hey, Tom," Jake called out, his voice echoing in the empty corridor. "Found the ship's treasure yet? Maybe a pot of gold at the end of your rainbow." Danny laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Or maybe the aliens are going to come back and make him their king. King of the crazy old men." Rachel smiled but said nothing, just watched Tom with cold eyes. Tom straightened up slowly, his back protesting. "Just doing my job," he said quietly. "Your job?" Jake stepped closer. "Your job is maintenance. Fixing toilets and clearing air filters. Not playing archaeologist with a dead ship that nobody cares about." "I care about it," Tom said. "Yeah, we know," Danny said. "That's the problem. You care too much about the wrong things. This ship is worthless. Everyone knows it. Everyone except you." Tom didn't respond. He had learned long ago that arguing with people like Jake was pointless. They had made up their minds about him, about the ship, about everything. Nothing he said would change that. After they left, still laughing, Tom returned to his work. He had found another hidden panel yesterday, this one behind what looked like a decorative screen. It had taken him hours to remove the screen carefully without damaging it. Behind it was a small compartment containing what looked like a data storage unit. The corporate teams had missed it completely. They had been too focused on ripping out the obvious valuable parts to notice the subtle things, the hidden things, the things that required patience and attention to find. Tom connected the storage unit to his AI assistant. The device hummed and beeped, working hard to extract whatever information it contained. It would take days, maybe weeks, but Tom had time. Time was one thing he had plenty of. That evening, Director Walsh called him again. This time Grace wasn't there. Walsh sat behind his desk looking tired and frustrated. "Tom," I'm trying to be patient here, Walsh said, but you're becoming a problem. Ben's videos are making the station look bad. People are starting to ask questions about why we let you waste time on that ship. I'm not wasting time, Tom said. That's your opinion, Walsh replied, but it's not shared by anyone else here. The board wants results. They want profits. They don't want news stories about a senile old mechanic who thinks he can bring a dead alien ship back to life. Tom met Walsh's eyes. What if I could? Walsh blinked. What? What if I could bring it back to life? Would that change things? Walsh stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. Tom, that's impossible. The ship has been dead for 30 years. Every expert who's examined it says the same thing. It's beyond repair. Maybe they didn't look hard enough, Tom said. Or maybe you're seeing things that aren't there because you want them to be there. Walsh sighed. I'm giving you 2 more weeks. After that, I'm reassigning you to regular maintenance duties, full time. No more ship. Understood. Tom nodded slowly. Understood. 2 weeks. He would need to work faster. Tom had barely slept in 3 days. His eyes were red, and his hands trembled as he worked, but he couldn't stop now. He was so close. The power matrix in the central chamber was almost complete. Every wire had been cleaned, every connection tested, every circuit traced back to its source. His AI assistant had finally decoded the last of the storage unit files. The information it contained was staggering. The ship wasn't just a vessel. It was alive in a way that human technology had never achieved. Its systems were designed to recognize specific genetic patterns, to respond to certain biological markers that existed in only a tiny fraction of humanity. Tom didn't fully understand it all. The science was beyond him, but he understood enough. The ship had been waiting, not for just anyone, for someone specific, someone it would recognize. He stood in front of the power matrix now, studying the final connection. It was a simple thing, really, 2 contact points that needed to touch. But once they did, if his calculations were correct, the whole system would activate, or it would explode. Tom wasn't entirely sure which. His radio crackled. It was Pete from the main yard. Hey, Tom, you still in that death trap? We're heading to lunch. You should take a break. Tom ignored the radio. He had taken his last break yesterday. There was no time for breaks now. He reached out with a small connector tool, the kind used for delicate work. His hand shook. He took a breath, steadied himself, and brought the 2 points together. For a moment, nothing happened. Tom felt his heart sink. Maybe Walsh was right. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe he had wasted years on a dream that was never going to come true. Then the ship hummed. It was a low sound at first, so quiet Tom thought he might be imagining it. But it grew louder. The walls around him began to vibrate. Lights that had been dark for 30 years flickered to life, dim at first, then brighter. The air itself seemed to change, becoming warmer, almost alive with energy. Tom stepped back, his heart pounding. The power matrix was glowing now, a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The glow spread to the circuits he repaired, racing along the pathways like water flowing downhill, reaching every corner of the ship. Outside in the salvage yard, alarms began to sound. Jake had been cutting into a panel on another ship when the meridian lit up. He dropped his plasma cutter and stared, his mouth hanging open. The massive vessel was covered in light, bioluminescent patterns flowing across its surface like living things. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing he had ever seen. Lisa ran out of her office, her tablet forgotten on her desk. Danny and Rachel emerged from the workshop, tools clattering to the ground. Workers from every part of the station stopped what they were doing and stared. Director Walsh burst out of the main building, Grace right behind him. "What's happening?" he shouted, but no one had an answer. The lights on the meridian grew brighter. The hum became a sound that everyone could feel in their bones, a deep thrumming that seemed to come from the very center of the ship. Inside, Tom stood frozen. The chamber around him was alive with light and sound. Panels that had been dead were now active, displaying information in languages he didn't understand. The air smelled different, cleaner somehow, like the ship was breathing again after a long sleep. Then the light stabilized. The humming settled into a steady rhythm, and everything went quiet. Tom waited, hardly daring to breathe. The silence stretched out. Outside, the workers began to move closer to the ship, drawn by curiosity and fear. Walsh was shouting orders that no one was following. Jake took a step forward, then another. Rachel grabbed his arm. "Don't," she said. "We don't know what it's doing." "It's doing something," Jake said. "After 30 years of nothing, it's finally doing something." Ben had his phone out, recording everything. This was going to get millions of views. This was going to make him famous. He moved closer, trying to get a better angle. Inside the ship, Tom heard a new sound. It was soft at first, like a whisper, then louder. It was coming from the walls, from the floor, from the air itself. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't random. It was a voice. Tom's legs felt weak. He reached out to steady himself against the wall. The metal was warm under his palm, warmer than it should be, almost like skin. The voice grew clearer. It was speaking words, real words, in a language Tom understood. The words echoed through every speaker in the ship, through the communication system that connected to the entire station. Everyone on Kepler Station heard it. Everyone stopped moving. Everyone listened. And the voice said name. Tom's name. The voice was unlike anything Tom had ever heard. It was old, impossibly old, but also warm. It reminded him of his grandfather's voice from when he was a child, deep and comforting, but with something else mixed in, something not quite human. "Tom Harper," the voice said again, and the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We have waited. You have preserved what others would destroy. You have remembered what we feared was forgotten." Tom's mouth was dry. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His hand was still pressed against the warm metal wall, and he could feel something through it now. A pulse, a rhythm, like the ship had a heartbeat. Outside, chaos had erupted. Workers were running in different directions, some toward the ship, some away from it. Walsh was screaming into his radio, demanding answers from people who had no answers to give. Grace stood beside him, her face pale, her tablet hanging forgotten in her hand. Jake had backed away from the ship, his earlier confidence gone. "Did it just say Tom?" He asked nobody in particular. "Did that thing just say the old man's name?" Rachel nodded slowly, unable to look away from the glowing vessel. "It knows him," she whispered. "How does it know him?" Ben was still recording, his hands shaking so badly the video would be almost unwatchable. But he kept filming. This was beyond anything he had imagined. This was history happening right in front of him. Inside the ship, Tom finally found his voice. "Who are you?" he asked. His words sounded small and fragile in the vast chamber. "We are the Meridian," the voice replied. "We are messenger, seeker, guardian. We were sent across the stars 10,000 years ago with a sacred purpose, to find those who built us, to find those who remembered, to find you." "Me?" Tom shook his head. "I'm nobody. I'm just a mechanic, an old man who cleans ships." "You are more," the voice said, and there was something like kindness in it. "You carry within you the markers we were designed to recognize, the genetic signature of the builders. Your ancestor, William Harper, served aboard this vessel when humanity first touched the stars, long before your recorded history began." Tom felt dizzy. That's impossible. 10,000 years ago, humans were barely surviving on Earth. We didn't have space travel. We didn't have any of this. "What you were taught is incomplete," the voice said. "Humanity rose once before, reached out to the stars, built vessels like us, then fell, forgot, started again from the beginning. But some bloodlines carry the memory in their very cells. You are one of those bloodlines, Tom Harper. Your DNA sings the same song as those who gave us life." Tom's legs gave out, and he sat down hard on the metal floor. His mind was racing, trying to process what he was hearing. It was too much, too big. "Why me?" he asked. "There must be others with the same bloodline." "There are," the voice confirmed. "But you are the one who found us. You are the one who cared. When others saw only salvage, only profit, Only dead metal. You saw something worth saving. You treated us with honor, with respect. That matters, Tom Harper. That matters more than you know. Outside, Walsh had finally gotten control of himself. He was marching toward the ship, flanked by security officers. His face was red with anger and fear. "Harper," he shouted. "Harper, you get out of that ship right now." "That's an order." The ship's voice continued, ignoring Walsh completely. "We carry knowledge, Tom Harper. The accumulated wisdom of 100 civilizations. Star charts to worlds your people have never seen. Technologies that could transform your species. Medical advances that could end disease. Energy systems that could power your worlds without destroying them. All of this we offer freely." Tom looked up at the glowing panels around him. Why? Why offer us all of this? Because one human remembered how to care. The voice said simply. Because in a universe where most beings measure worth by profit and power, you measure it by preservation and respect. You cleaned our halls when others would have torn them apart. You studied our symbols when others called them worthless. You believed we mattered when everyone said we did not. Walsh reached the entrance to the ship, but stopped at the threshold. The opening was glowing with bright blue light, and he didn't dare cross it. "Harper," he shouted again. "What have you done?" Tom stood up slowly, his old joints protesting, but he felt stronger somehow, more certain than he had felt in years. He walked toward the entrance, toward Walsh and the others, toward the light. "I didn't do anything," Tom said quietly. "I just cared for something that needed caring for. That's all." The voice spoke again, loud enough for everyone in the yard to hear. "Tom Harper is our bridge to humanity. Through him, we will share what we know, but only through him. This is our choice. This is our gift, to the one who saw value where others saw none." The next morning, Kepler Station looked like a different world. News crews had arrived from Earth and every major colony. Ships filled the docking bays, reporters and scientists and government officials all demanding access to the Meridian. The salvage yard that had been quiet and forgotten was now the center of the entire galaxy's attention. Tom sat in his small apartment, looking out at the chaos below. He hadn't slept. How could he sleep when everything had changed so completely in just one day? There was a knock at his door. When he opened it, he found Walsh standing there. The director looked like he hadn't slept either. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair messy, his eyes tired. "Can I come in?" Walsh asked quietly. Tom stepped aside and let him enter. Walsh stood in the middle of the small room, looking uncomfortable. He had never been to Tom's apartment before, had probably never thought about where the old mechanic lived or how he lived. "I owe you an apology," Walsh said finally. "I was wrong about you, about the ship, about everything." Tom poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one to Walsh. "You weren't wrong," Tom said. "You were practical. That's your job. Nobody could have known what would happen." Walsh shook his head. "I should have listened. You tried to tell me, and I dismissed you, called you senile, threatened to fire you." He paused. "The board wants to give you credit now. Put your name on everything. Make you the face of this discovery." "I don't want that," Tom said immediately. "I know," Walsh replied, "but it doesn't matter what you want anymore. The ship chose you. That makes you important whether you like it or not." Down in the salvage yard, Jake was being interviewed by a reporter from Earth. The young man's face was red as he tried to explain why he had mocked Tom for years. "I didn't understand," he kept saying. "I thought he was wasting his time. I was stupid." The reporter asked if he regretted posting those videos making fun of Tom. Jake nodded miserably. "I've deleted them all," he said. "I wish I could take back everything I said, everything I did." Nearby, Lisa was helping to organize the crowds of people who wanted to see the ship. She had volunteered to assist Tom in any way she could. When someone asked her if she had always believed in Tom's work, she was honest. "No," she said. "I thought he was foolish. I was wrong. We were all wrong. Ben had become an accidental celebrity. His shaky video of the ship lighting up had been viewed billions of times. News agencies were offering him money for the footage. But every time he watched it, he felt sick. He had meant to mock Tom. Instead, he had recorded the moment that changed human history. The shame of that irony would stay with him forever. Rachel and Danny had both requested transfers to other stations. They couldn't face Tom after how they had treated him. Their requests were denied. The board needed everyone who had witnessed the activation to stay and help with the investigation. Tom returned to Meridian on the third day after the activation. The ship welcomed him like an old friend, lights brightening as he walked through the corridors. Scientists followed behind him, taking notes, asking questions, trying to understand how he had done what armies of experts could not. "I just listened," Tom told them. "I paid attention. I cared." The ship began sharing its knowledge slowly. Medical techniques that could cure diseases humanity had struggled with for centuries. Energy systems that were clean and limitless. Agricultural methods that could end hunger on every human world. But it would only share through Tom. When others tried to access the systems directly, the ship went silent. "Tom Harper is our chosen representative," the ship's voice would say. "Through him, we honor all of humanity, but the choice is ours to make." Governments try to negotiate. Corporations offer money. Military leaders demanded access. None of it mattered. The ship had made its decision based not on power or wealth, but on one old man's kindness and patience. 6 months later, Tom stood on a stage in front of the Galactic Council. He wore a simple suit, nothing fancy, and his hands still bore the calluses of decades of manual labor. Representatives from dozens of worlds watched as he was officially named humanity's ambassador to Meridian and all its associated civilizations. Jake was in the audience. So were Lisa, Danny, Rachel, and Ben. They had all traveled to Earth for the ceremony. They had all learned the same hard lesson. Tom's speech was short. "I'm just a mechanic," he said. "I fix what was broken and clean what was dirty. That's all I ever did. If there's a lesson in this, it's a simple one. Take care of the things that matter, even when nobody else thinks they do. Respect what others dismiss. Care when caring seems pointless." He paused and looked out at the crowd. The universe is full of wonders we don't understand yet. Maybe the key to unlocking them isn't force or intelligence or money. Maybe it's just basic human decency. The Meridian, watching from orbit above Earth, pulsed with soft blue light in agreement.